You have come here not merely to listen to a lecture, but to face a threshold, and thresholds are never comfortable. They are moments of rupture, symbolic deaths before an awakening. Tonight, I invite you to step into a space that does not belong to ordinary logic or external behavior, but into that dark corridor of your own inner architecture, the place where you often unknowingly turn away from yourself and cast onto others the very things you cannot yet hold within. It begins subtly, a shadow flinch, a tightening of the soul. When someone walks into the room, you see them, and yet you don't see them. What you see is something activated, inflamed, a wound, and you react, you judge, you blame. But the true culprit, it does not wear another's face. It is not the voice of your partner, or the neglect of your parent, or even the betrayal of a friend. The true culprit is an ancient fragment of you, long rejected, long buried, and now stirring in the depths, gasping for the air of your awareness. We must understand psychologically and symbolically that the human psyche abhors a vacuum. Whatever is disowned within must find form, and if not accepted consciously, it will erupt unconsciously in the form of projection, in the form of accusations, in the form of enemies manufactured by the very contours of your inner war. In short, you turn others into villains for crimes your own unconscious is committing against you. When we speak of inner rejection, we do not mean a simple disapproval, flaws or weaknesses. No, we speak of an energetic severance. Something once true in your nature denied its voice, and thus it festers in the dark. It might have been your anger, your sadness, your sensuality, your softness, your magic. But because you were taught directly or indirectly that this part of you was dangerous, unacceptably, shameful, you cast it away. And now, like a ghost-denied burial, it haunts you not as itself, but in the mask of other people. The rejected self does not disappear. It becomes symbol. And symbols, my dear friends, are not mere abstractions. They are the vocabulary of the unconscious. When you dream of a snarling beast chasing you, it is not just a nightmare. It is your buried rage demanding integration. When you fixate on someone's arrogance, their manipulations, their toxicity, pause. Is it them, or is it the inner tyrant you have refused to meet? Is it the chaos you hate, or the chaos you were never allowed to feel? Let us be clear. Not all outer harm is projection. There are real traumas, real oppressions, real injustices. But we must also confess at the temple gates of truth that many of our so-called enemies are mirrors, sacred, irritating, uninvited mirrors, and until we bow to what they reflect, we remain fragmented. The world becomes a battlefield, not because others are dangerous, but because we are at war with ourselves. This is not a metaphor. This is psychic fact. Inner rejection breeds external confusion. It is like a child crying in the cellar of your soul. But instead of going down to cradle that child, you accuse the neighbors for making noise. You demonize the storm for waking you. you run from your own home, your inner home, and call it haunted, when in truth it is only neglected. And how cunning the psyche becomes, how cunning you become. You begin to cloak your projections in spiritual language. You say, that person has bad energy, or I just have a bad feeling about them. But often what you are sensing is not them, but the activation of a wound still raw in you. You call it intuition, but it is anxiety. You call it discernment, but it is your unconscious crying out to be felt. If your shadow could speak, it would say, that person is not the problem. I am the echo you have silenced. And now I speak in others' voices, because you will not listen to mine. The work, therefore, is not in changing the world, but in turning inward with the lantern of honest attention. We must re-enter the rooms we've locked, shut. We must sit with the voices we've silenced. We must allow ourselves to feel again what we decided somewhere long ago was not safe to feel, but this is not just psychological work. This is sacred work, alchemical, mythic. For the one who integrates their rejection becomes whole. And wholeness is not perfection. It is complexity embraced. It is the sacred marriage of opposites. It is light touching shadow without judgment. Do you remember the ancient tale of the monster in the labyrinth, the Minotaur, half man, half beast, hated by his lineage, locked away in a maze? What if I told you this is not just mythology, it is you? You who locked away your animal instincts, your hunger, your scouse, your howl, and now you wander life's corridors, fearing what you might meet in others, not realizing the mazes of your own making. And the monster waits not to devour you, but to be named, seen, and freed. Inner rejection creates division, not just within the self, but in society. It creates scapegoats. It births ideologies of purity. It is the silent author behind prejudice, behind war, behind moral superiority. Because what we cannot own in ourselves, we punish in others. The child who was shamed for being too emotional grows into the adult who mocks overly sensitive people. The man taught to suppress his feminine becomes the crusader against softness in the world. The woman punished for her wildness becomes the enforcer of conformity. All of it projection, all of it inner exile reenacted in the outer world. The unconscious, you see, is not personal. It is ancestral, archetypal. When you reject a part of yourself, you are also rejecting an ancient lineage of energy that humanity itself has buried. You are rejecting the witch, the rebel, the crone, the fool, the warrior. These are not just ideas. They are primal psychic patterns, the archetypes, and they live in your blood. When someone in your life triggers you, ask not only what they did, but what they represent. What archetype have they activated in you? Is it the victim, the persecutor, the seducer, the judge? Then pause and ask, where does that archetype live in me? Where did I first meet it? Not outside, but within. This inquiry requires courage, because to reclaim the rejected self is to admit that you have wounded yourself, that you have participated, unconsciously in your own imprisonment. And we do not like this truth. We would rather blame the jailer. But what if the cell was built by your own hands, brick by brick, each one laid in the moment you decided, I am not allowed to be this. There is a grief in this revelation, but there is also freedom. Because if you build the prison, then you also hold the key. And what is that key? It is attention, honest, unflinching attention. To sit with a feeling, without the story, to return to the original wound, not to analyze it, but to feel it, to let the rejected part speak, to give it art, movement, breath, space. Some of you will dream tonight of figures chasing you, shadows lurking, rooms collapsing. These dreams are not random. They are your psyche's poetic protest. They are invitations to turn toward what you have turned away from. In one woman's dream, a man kept appearing, furious, screaming through a locked door. She was terrified of him. But when she finally opened the door in a later dream, he wept. Why did you leave me? He asked. I was only trying to come home. So it is with your shadow. It is not evil. It is exiled, and the longer you reject it, the more twisted its voice becomes, until it speaks through addiction, through projection, through sabotage, through the stories you tell about others that are really coded messages from your own unconscious. The mind is a magnificent architect, but it is also a cunning escape artist. It will use reason to avoid responsibility. It will create narratives to protect the ego. But the soul wants truth. And truth is not safe. It is holy. It burns. It humbles, but it heals. You must not be afraid of the burn, for in that sacred fire, the false culprits are revealed to be your own creations, your own masks. And beneath those masks, something even deeper waits, not a monster, not a weakness, but a part of you more ancient than pain, the original face, the divine root, the one who remembers. And so I ask you, whom have you turned into a villain in your life? Whose name have you whispered with contempt, when perhaps you should have whispered it with reverence? What if they were only carrying the projection of your unmet self? What if they, too, are fragments of your labyrinth? To integrate the rejected is not to erase conflict. It is to humanize it. It is to see the other not as enemy, but as mirror. And that is the beginning of healing, not just for you, but for the collective. For every time one of you reclaims a shadow, you lessen the world's need for war. We will continue. Bitte pause now, not to end, but to inhale. Let what was said sink beneath the intellect and stir the waters of your dreams tonight. Let your monster speak. Let your blame melt. And tomorrow, when you wake, dare to look at one person you resent and ask what in me is waiting to be reclaimed through them. Let us now descend even deeper, for the true transformation never occurs at the surface. It is not in the rearranging of thoughts, nor in the adoption of noble language. It is in the underworld journey, the katabasis where psyche meets soul, and the illusion of separation begins to dissolve. You see, inner rejection is not simply emotional avoidance, it is mythic dismemberment. It is a psychic crucifixion of one part of the self for the sake of survival. And each time you cast away something inside, you leave behind a psychic corpse. And this corpse rots until it rises. Not to haunt you, but to demand reintegration. You do not get to ignore your wholeness forever. You can delay it. But the cost will be your authenticity. What makes this path so excruciating is that the rejected self does not return to you gently. No, it returns through chaos, through breakdown, through the strange magnetic pull to the very people who wound you. The psyche, in its infinite wisdom, will keep leading you into relationships, situations, and dreams that mirror your exile until you finally ask, why does this keep happening to me? And if you have courage, the question will evolve, what in me keeps calling this pattern forward? Let me offer you something now. A symbol, the mirror, it is not a new metaphor. It is ancient. Narcissus looked into the water and fell in love with his reflection, not because he was vain, but because he saw a part of himself he did not recognize, and so he drowned in his own image. This is not merely a story of ego, it is a tragedy of disconnection. For what we reject becomes foreign, and what becomes foreign, we fall in love with, or we fear, or we attack precisely because it is us wearing the mask of them. When you look at another person and feel an overwhelming charge, be it desire, disgust, envy, contempt, that charge is sacred. It is not just a reaction, it is a summons. It is your unconscious knocking on the door of your perception, saying, look here, this is not just about them. That charge is a scent trail back to your wound, to your unmet desire, to your forgotten self. And so when you say, that person is too much, ask too much, for whom? For your ego, or for your capacity to embrace what they mirror. When you say, they're so manipulative, ask, where have I become a manipulator of myself? Twisting truth, so I don't have to feel pain. When you say, they always need attention, dare to wonder what part of me is starving for acknowledgement, but has learned to get by in silence. This is not about blaming yourself. This is about reclaiming your authorship. The ego would prefer to remain victim. It likes the narrative that says, I am hurt because they did something. But healing begins when you say, I feel hurt and there is something ancient in this feeling that longs to be seen. This is not about erasing others' responsibility, but it is about retrieving your soul from the web of projection. Let us turn now to dream, for dreams are the theater of the rejected. In dream time, your conscious defenses fall, and the things you deny during the day come forth in symbol, in absurdity, in disguise. A woman once came to me in great distress. She kept dreaming of drowning. She would be walking peacefully, then suddenly swept into a flood, unable to breathe. She believed it was a premonition, but when we explored further, she revealed that as a child, she was never allowed to cry. Tears were weakness. She said, crying meant punishment. Her dream was not about water in the world. It was about water within, emotion long damp, pain long buried. Here in a flood, the rejected, self-demanding release. This is the beauty of the unconscious. It never forgets. It remembers the truth of you, even when you do not. It keeps the records of your original longings, your silenced voices, your unclaimed shadows. And when the conscious self is ready, truly ready, the unconscious begins to speak louder. Through symptoms, through obsessions, through synchronicities, through heartbreak, until you finally say, enough of this sleep. I must turn inward. But do not imagine this turning inward is gentle. It is a crucifixion. The ego will resist. The inner child will protest. The body may even ache. For when you open the vaults of your rejection, you are releasing energy that has been imprisoned. And like any prisoner, it will not emerge smiling. It will emerge wounded, feral, confused. Do not be alarmed. This is the chaos before the alchemy. True inner work begins when you stop trying to be good and start becoming whole. When you stop chasing clarity and start tolerating complexity. When you stop judging your reactivity and start tracing it back to its roots. It is only by descending into the basement of your psyche that you discover the forgotten parts, dirty, bruised, but sacred. This descent is what the ancients called the dark night of the soul. It is not depression, it is initiation. The soul does not grow in light, it grows in mystery. It grows in the cracks, and rejection is the deepest crack. It is where your soul was torn from itself. And healing is a sacred sewing together, not to erase the scar, but to bless it. You must become the parent your inner child never had. You must become the priest your soul never confessed to. You must become the listener your shadow begged for. No one else can do this work for you. No therapist, no teacher, not even me. I can guide, but only you can walk the dreamscape of your wounds. Only you can kneel at the altar of your own fragments. Do not look for perfection. Look for intimacy with yourself. One day, you will notice something extraordinary. You will meet someone who once triggered you and feel no charge. Not because they've changed, but because you will speak to someone you once hated and see not a villain, but a fellow exile. You will hear a story that once echoed your pain, and instead of recoiling, you will offer your presence. That is how you know the rejection is healing. When the outer world no longer carries your burden, because you have welcomed it home, let us pause here not to conclude, but to allow the psyche to breathe. For what has been spoken is not to be understood all at once. Let it echo. Let it reach into your dreams. Let it stir questions you are not yet ready to answer. That is the sign of real transformation, not certainty, but trembling. In the next breath of this journey, we shall move into the realm of ancestral rejection, of the collective shadow, and of how your personal inner exile weaves into the forgotten myths of humanity itself. What if I told you that the pain you carry is not only yours, that the rejection within you may be the echo of generations that what you feel as your personal wound is but one strand in a long and silent lineage of silencing for the psyche, is not isolated. It is not merely a product of your memories. It is a field, a living archive of the collective, and when you reject a part of yourself, you are also carrying the rejection of your mother, your father, your grandmother's silence, your great-grandfather's rage, your culture's shame, your society's illusion. You see, we do not only inherit eye color or bone structure, we inherit unresolved stories. We inherit secrets. We inherit shadows, and because these are not spoken, they live beneath the language of the conscious. They live in symbol, in energy, in tension, in dreams, in symptoms that have no diagnosis. You wonder why you feel crushed by guilt when you speak your truth. Perhaps someone long ago was punished for doing the same. You wonder why intimacy suffocates you. Perhaps there was a time in your bloodline when love was a trap. You flinch at anger not because it is dangerous, but because somewhere in your lineage, expressing fury meant exile or death. These are not just your fears, they are psychic heirlooms, and yet here you are, alive, awake, listening, and in this listening, something ancient stirs. The rejected voices of your ancestry whisper, will you carry this forward, or will you end the cycle? This is why projection is so dangerous. Not only does it prevent your personal healing, it prolongs the inheritance of distortion. Every time you call someone too much, too emotional, too selfish, without looking at what this reflects in you, you reinforce the very fragmentation that began long before you were born. And so I ask you, do you wish to live as a repetition of your ancestors' repression? Or do you wish to become their redemption? To become the Redeemer is not to become the Savior. You do not rescue anyone, but you remember what was silenced. You give voice to what was denied. You feel what was forbidden. You weep what was held back. And in doing so, you become a holy site of integration, not just for yourself, but for the countless souls behind you who had no language, no permission, no time to feel what you are feeling now. The archetype of the healer is not a role, it is a sacrifice. To become whole, you must be willing to walk through fire that did not begin with you. You must be willing to meet the ghosts of your blood. And you must do it not as performance, but as devotion. This is sacred psychological work. It is not pretty. It is not popular. It does not make you a hero. It makes you honest. It makes you real. And it makes you humble. Now let us turn toward the world. For everything I have said about the individual is magnified in the collective. What we see in society, the scapegoating, the moral panic, the canceling, the righteousness. These are all collective projections. Entire groups made to carry what the culture cannot own, we label them corrupt, weak, sauvage, inferior, dangerous, deviant. But what if they are not what we say they are? What if they are the faces we place over our own rejected instincts? Every ideology that creates us versus them is a psychic bypass. Every political rage that blinds us is a cover for our internal impotence. We seek an enemy outside because we cannot face the war within. This is not a political statement, it is a spiritual law. I once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But allow me now to expand. Everything we demonize in others is often the mask we use to hide our deepest longings, our earliest wounds, our silent shame. And until we are brave enough to hold this possibility, we will remain children throwing shadows on the wall and calling them monsters. Do not misunderstand me. Evil exists. Injustice is real, but our inability to distinguish projection from perception makes us blind. The eye clouded by shadow cannot see truth. It sees a distorted dream and calls it reality, and so we attack, cancel, exile, destroy, not to uphold justice, but to maintain the fragile illusions of our own unconscious safety. True psychological maturity begins when you stop asking, who is to blame, and start asking, what part of me have I abandoned? You must begin to live symbolically. Everything that stings must become a teacher. Every irritation, an invitation, every pattern, a path. There are no accidents in the inner world, only forgotten parts making their return through mirrored form. The man who cannot cry will find himself enraged at softness. The woman who cannot be alone will be addicted to unavailable men. The soul that fears emptiness will chase chaos and call it life. The unconscious will always fulfill its myth, whether you are aware of it or not. And so the task before you is not to fix, but to see yourself in every judgment, to see your childhood in every trigger, to see your rejection in every accusation, to see your archetype in every dream, to see your inheritance in every fear, to see your wholeness in every fracture. This seeing is not intellectual, it is mystical. It is what the mystics called illumination. Not the light of certainty, but the light that arises when you enter the dark willingly. And in that dark, you will not find monsters. You will find your forgotten self, sitting quietly, waiting to be loved. Let me offer one last image before we pause. Imagine a vast cathedral, silent, forgotten. Within it, thousands of stained glass windows, each one a part of your soul. Over the years, you boarded some of them up, too bright, too painful, too wild, too shameful. And so the cathedral dimmed, you forgot the colors, you began to live in shadow, thinking it was normal. This work, this inner reclaiming, is not about lighting new candles. It is about removing the boards, letting light return, letting color return, letting complexity return. And in time, as the light pours through your stained glass, you will begin to recognize something holy. The beauty was never gone, only hidden, only waiting. And so I leave you for now, not with answers, but with a trembling invitation. Remove one board, feel one feeling, reclaim one part, and see what light returns. Now that we have walked through the shadows, now that you have glimpsed the mirror, not outside but within, you may begin to feel something strange, not the relief of arrival, but the discomfort of recognition. This is the paradox of real healing. It does not always soothe at first. It wounds differently. It wounds awake. For once you see the unconscious playing out in your life, you cannot unsee it. And this, I tell you, is grace. You are not here to become better. You are here to become whole, and wholeness includes the mess, the grief, the rage, the craving, the numbness, the contradiction, all of it, not as flaws to be eliminated, but as forgotten pieces of the divine puzzle that is you. We do not integrate the shadow to be superior. We integrate it to be sincere, and sincerity means to live without masks, not because masks are bad, but because you no longer need them to hide what is true. The man who has met his own capacity for betrayal no longer projects it wildly onto others. The woman who has touched the flame of her own envy does not need to envy in secret anymore. These truths become portals, once feared, now familiar, once exiled, now embodied. You may ask, how do I know if I have integrated my rejection? You will know when you stop trying to fix others and begin to feel them. You will know when someone triggers you, and you respond not with blame, but with wonder. You will know when what once overwhelmed you becomes your invitation to presence. And you will know when you can hold paradox in your hands without the need to solve it. The journey to this place is not straight, it is not efficient, it is not linear. The psyche is not a machine, it is a myth unfolding, a spiral, a sacred dance between knowing and not knowing, between rising and returning, between clarity and confusion. And the deeper you go, the more mystery opens its mouth and sings through you. You begin to understand that your pain was never punishment. It was a map that the people you once blamed were never enemies. They were initiators. They carried the exact frequencies that agitated your unconscious into awakening. And yes, it hurt. But from the wound, a deeper question emerged. What have I left behind inside me that longs to come home? That is the central question of the soul, not how do I succeed, not how do I heal, but what in me longs to come home. And so I invite you now, as we come to the final breath of this shared hour, to become a traveler of your own inner landscape, not a colonizer, not a conqueror, but a listener, a cartographer of feeling, a witness to what has waited for decades, perhaps lifetimes, to be heard. Do not rush this. Wholeness is not a destination. It is a remembering, a soft unfolding of inner truth, layer by layer, symbol by symbol, sensation by sensation. You might begin to dream more vividly. You might cry at strange moments. You might find yourself drawn to forgotten music, forgotten places, forgotten corners of yourself. Follow those impulses. They are breadcrumbs. You might feel the temptation to return to blame, to make others responsible. Again, that is normal. The ego does not go quietly. But now you have a choice. You can ask, what is this really about? What part of me have I abandoned that now rises in another's behavior? That question, that simple, sacred question can change everything. You will not always find the answer, but the asking is enough. The asking itself is an act of power. There are no 10 steps to wholeness, no tidy protocol. But allow me to offer you a thread of guidance, a rhythm of soul work, not in list, but in invitation. Begin to notice what you reject in others. Then pause, ask what it reflects in you. Trace it backward, not to shame, but to tenderness. Let the image return, let the body respond, let the heart ache. Do not solve it. Feel it, breathe it, name it. Write what the rejected part wants to say. Let it speak in your journal, your song, your art, your silence. Bring that voice into the light, not to display it, but to embrace it, not to justify it, but to honor it, and then wait, see what shifts. Let the outer world echo back the transformation. When the self is restored, the world no longer needs to carry your pain. As the mystics have always said, as within, so without. And so, beloved listener of the inner, I tell you this: the people you hate, the people you fear, the people you chase or blame or idolize or avoid, they are your teachers. Not because they are wise, but because they stir your truth. And your truth, once stirred, can lead you back to the holy terrain of the self. You forgot to love. You do not need to become anything more. You simply need to remember what you have left behind. The exile is already waiting at the gate. Barefoot, bruised, but radiant. Go to them. Do not wait for permission. They are your guide now. They are you. Welcome them home. Let the cathedral of your soul ring again with the sound of reintegration. And may you never again confuse the faces of others with the ghosts you still carry. Instead, may you look into every mirror, every dream, every heartbreak, every face, and ask, what if this too is my reflection, longing to return? Then bow and listen and begin again